Hello friends, today we'll be getting back to our transit videos and we'll be talking about Venus in the sign of Capricorn making a sextile to Saturn. But I want us to keep in mind, this is not just a sextile of Venus and Saturn. This has been a story in the making for about a year now. And I want you to think about when Venus started as retrograde in the sign of Aries, it went all the way back into Pisces last year, stationed right beside Saturn in the sign of Pisces, very close to the degree where Venus is right now. So to understand today, we have to go back a little bit, backtrack, because this aspect right now is representing the closure of a dialogue that's been ongoing between Venus and Saturn. And before getting into the depth of this video, if you're interested in the upcoming transits, which are getting more interesting by the day, with this ginormous stellium in Capricorn and another one upcoming in the sign of Aquarius, please subscribe and press the notification bell so YouTube notifies you when the new videos come out. And I do want to say it's getting pretty exciting because all the planets by end of this week are going to be combust. That means because they're getting so close to the sun, that sun is kind of eating up all of their significations, and it's saying something about who we are supposed to be right now and where we're supposed to stand. But those videos will be coming up soon. And there's another thing I want to ask for you guys' patience, because we're going to backtrack. In the first part of the video, we're going to be reviewing where Venus has been to understand where we have arrived today. And if you guys want to get into a greater depth of what each of these transits mean, you can go to my website. I post the article that gets into far greater depth than what we can do in these videos here. And you guys can go to parisayazdi.com for those articles. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. So I want to take you guys back to exactly a year, and that's where this story is continuing from. Because when Saturn and Venus met, Saturn had already been in the sign of Pisces for a while, and it was shaping the conditions of that sphere of our lives for over a year. And Saturn's work during that time was all about deconstruction, dissolution, and the gradual removal of the things that were upholding us and supporting us. Saturn was trying to dissolve every kind of projection, imagination, or unconscious expectations, things that didn't have its grounding in reality. It was trying to dissolve and remove that. Saturn was weakening everything that couldn't hold the weight of reality, what's real in our life, and we were just relying on mere belief or hope. And if you pay attention, if you do a little bit of reflection, it wasn't like some big explosion. Saturn was doing this work methodically, slowly, silently, and we were just feeling it through increments of fatigue, loss of our momentum, and just stagnation of our movement. So there was a gradual realization that we couldn't just carry things forward and move forward the way we had always. So when Venus came in last January and met Saturn at that 15-degree mark, and it was just going to pass Saturn at that point, it was like we got a feeling or a whiff of what Saturn was doing, but we couldn't really internalize it. It was almost like moving towards Saturn, getting stalled, and then ignoring it and continuing to move towards things that usually attract us, the way that we want to feel, the way that we want to express those Venetian qualities. So it couldn't register. We couldn't register the information fully. So that 15-degree mark was an initial transmission of Saturn's information of, yo, this is what I've been doing. Do you get it? Saturn was saying to the Venus within us, I've changed the landscape of your life. And we felt it, but we ignored it. Saturn was saying, pay attention. The foundations that once upon a time supported your desires, relationship, and connectivity, they've been altered. I've dissolved many things. But again, we received this message partially. Like we registered the presence of constraints, the erosion of things, and the seriousness of things, but we couldn't internalize it. And if you remember, quickly after this encounter with Saturn, Venus zoomed into Aries, and this was right before the eclipse season. And we got to remember, Aries represents movement, action, assertion, initiation, and it's about forward movement and forward thrust. And we just kept proceeding forward, like we can go get our goals, the things that we are attracted to, the desires that we have, we can just go get them. Because anything that comes into the sign of Aries is operating through the premise of immediacy. It's about active, instinctive engagement. But Venus, that's when the Venus in us started to realize what Saturn was talking about, because we couldn't initiate. Our motivation to get the things that we desire kept meeting some sort of a resistance. we couldn't ignite. Our desires kept encountering some sort of a limitation. Our attractions constantly ask us to recalibrate things. So it put us in a state of suspension when it comes to the Venetian qualities in terms of how we want to connect. And that means our habituated way of movement and getting things and connecting didn't work. So we had to pause and we had to reassess, why is it that nothing's working out? And that marks the moment when Venus stationed to go retrograde back into Pisces, almost as if Venus is like, oh my God, Saturn was trying to tell me something. I felt it too, but I can't remember what it was because I was in such a rush to get out of there. And you know, Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. You don't want Saturn with an exalted Venus. So Venus was like, I'm just going to move out of here. So this was kind of like the station was like pivoting really quickly from forward outward motion to going back to do some sort of a reassessment. So the Venus within us had to go back to revisit our values, attachments, desires, ways of connecting, and where we have invested ourselves and why things are not working. And this is a crazy thing. When Venus went back into Pisces, it went all the way back to 24 degrees to station there. So it would start its direct motion at 24, while Saturn was sitting at 25 degrees, only 1 degree apart, and very close to the degrees of this Venus right now in a sextile position. So that station gave Venus enough proximity to allow sustained engagement, because when a planet stations, it's like just standing still. And Saturn's so slow moving. So it was like these two planets, the Venus within us and the Saturn within us, the Saturn in the environment of our life, or just sitting there and having a dialogue for a long time. This was a Venus that was trying to get a comprehension of what the hell had happened to its life for the past year and a half, while Saturn was in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn uploaded everything that it had done to this Venus within us. We became conscious of the accumulated consequences of Saturn's dissolution and the way it was dissolving the structures of our lives. Last January, we saw how Saturn had eroded so many of our relational dynamic and the way that we feel connected to our lives. So that was the moment where Venus, the Venus within us, realized that I cannot have the same desires. I cannot connect to the world in the same way. We started to learn where so many of our attachments were just based on our own fantasy and not entrenched in reality. So that phase allowed the Venus drive within us to recalibrate our operating principles when it comes to desire, attraction, and connection. So in a theoretical way, we came to realize how we need to readapt, what we had to now come to endure, what kind of responsibilities were being placed on our shoulders. We realized the way that we were defining what's beautiful, what's luxurious, what's comfortable, everything had changed. It had all changed. And of course, after that, Venus completed its station, went through its shadow degrees, and completed its journey through the zodiac, now with this new understanding that it had. And now a year has passed since that first meeting. Our experiences have now accumulated. If you look back, we've adjusted many of our choices, what we desire, who we're connected to, what attracts us. So many of us have gone through this idea of, I cannot be in the relationship with these same types of people. This came from that download of Saturn. And now Venus is standing in the field of Capricorn and forming that sextile with Saturn in the sign of Pisces. And I want you two guys to just, before moving forward, the nature of sextiles in general indicates opportunities that are coming through cooperation. It reflects readiness rather than pressure, because like a square tells you you're under pressure, you need to act, that tension will break you. But a sextile is saying that there's something that's harmonizing here. So alignment works, force is not necessary. And this sextile, I'll get into it, is talking about a completion of a dynamic that's been ongoing between Saturn and Pisces and Venus. So it's representing what we need to integrate now. And as I was saying earlier, all the planets are combust, including Venus. So this is saying that these lessons of integration, because the sun represents the self, is becoming part of ourself. We've done a lot of work to arrive to this moment. Even though we're talking about Saturn, there's a kind of a quiet warmth, believe it or not, because it's a sextile. And the warmth is coming from us now understanding. And that understanding is allowing us to replace uncertainty. This is the Venus within us having this dialogue with Saturn and saying to Saturn, I get it. I understand how to express my values through the responsibilities I now have, the things that I've learned. I'm responsible for them. I understand the work that it's required of me now. I accept it. I accept the reality of things. This is a Venus that's saying, I understand I have certain attractions, but now I am committed. I know the difference now between what's real, what's a fantasy. I'm not seeking novelties anymore. This is a Venus within us that understands the real practical work of love. Love in practice. Love in theory is fantastic, but love and the ground zero of life can be grimy. It requires being realistic, responsible, everything that is within the sign of Capricorn right now. This is a Venus that can internalize this now. So this is a Venus within us that has gone from the theory of love to praxis and practice of love. And it's really good that Venus is in the sign of Capricorn, because this field with Mercury present there in that field too, it's given us a practical language so we can discern it, we can understand it. In Capricorn, again, because of its practicality, it's down to earth nature. It's showing us how our desires have to be structured. And only then, and through that kind of realism, can our affection be maintained long term. Capricorn is showing us how our attractions can be sustained over time. This is Saturn's sign, so everything has to do with time too. We're understanding what it means to be consistent in how we deal with other people, how we connect with them. What kind of consistency we require. We don't have patience for BS and flaky people anymore. It's like, do you walk the walk or do you just talk the walk? Because if you just want to do the latter, I'm not in it. I'm out. See ya. We're learning what it means to show love, not just to theoretically love someone on the inside or just accept someone else's word when they say, I love you, but there's no action showing that in practical everyday terms. So meaning is finally finding its containment despite all the dissolving that Saturn has done. It's like we're getting to the foundation and the structures that remain that are absolutely necessary at this point. And there's another thing, and I want us to keep this in mind. This exchange right now is happening in a meaningful framework. And that's because Saturn is sitting in the sign of Pisces. This is the sign where Venus is exalted, as I was mentioning earlier. So this is a sign where it amplifies Venus's qualities. Venus is at the seat of her power. So it can amplify sensitivity, the way we want to connect and merge with other people, its sense of compassion and love of oneness. That's what I mean about merging. It doesn't want differentiations. It wants me and you to be an us, a unit of expression. So the Venus within us, after everything that has gone through since January, it's finally come to a place where it's like, I understand what this concept of oneness is, this idea of merging. And it's not based on fantasy anymore, not fairy tales. This Venus in us understands that this process of merging actually requires hard work, practical hard work. And then at the same time, I'm saying that this is a meaningful framework because while Saturn's sitting in Venus's exaltation sign, Venus is in Saturn's sign of Capricorn. So Saturn's very much supporting Venus and its understandings. That's why I'm saying that there's a softer thing happening here. Saturn's not dishing out harsh lessons anymore. It's almost as if Saturn's looking at Venus and it's like, I appreciate what you've gone through and what you've come to understand. It's almost like giving it a little bravo. And there's one more thing. There's always one more thing. I want us to also remember across Capricorn and Cancer, we have Jupiter there, and Jupiter's exalted and Jupiter's retrograde, which means that Jupiter is super close to Earth. That means all of its significations are being amplified and magnified. And if you think about it, Jupiter is the Lord of Pisces, and Jupiter is in opposition to Venus. So this Jupiter is also showing this Venus, yes, it requires hard work. But how do you actually nourish yourself? How do you nourish your relationship? How do you still bring that sense of softness? Because when we overemphasize hard work, we start to embody a lot of harsh qualities that can take the joy and the pleasure of life away also. So Jupiter is also bringing the sense of softness as a reminder to this whole equation. So all of these relationships between these signs and planets are creating a relational harmony. They're supporting coherence rather than understanding through conflict, and thank God for that. And there's another thing. This is becoming one of those things, and another thing, and another thing. There's so much to every transit. There's never enough time to like backtrack and to bring every component of the story. I have to cherry pick. But I think this is another important factor to keep in mind. And that is, this is the final dialogue between Venus and Saturn. In fact, from this Capricorn sign, all the planets that are there, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the Sun, this is the last time any of them will be having a dialogue with Saturn. Because Saturn's in the sign of Pisces. It's formulating a sextile to Capricorn. When all these planets get into Aquarius, they come into a blind spot. They can't see each other anymore, so they can't have this kind of a dialogue. An aspect is talking about a gaze. It's like you can see a planet. When it's only one place away from another planet, so Pisces, Aquarius, Aries from Pisces, it's very hard to see Aquarius and Aries. It's like it's in your blind spots. So this is the last time that Venus is going to have any interaction with Saturn as well, to the sign of Pisces, at least for another almost 30 years, 28 years to be exact. And the next time that Venus is going to meet Saturn is going to be in the sign of Aries. So this was the last bit of dialogue between Venus and Saturn as well. So this is functioning as a closure. The closure between what happened last January to right now. So I would say that this aspect is emphasizing our sense of clarity right now, is showing us where we're steady. This is actually a moment where the experiences of the past 2.5 years are settling into some sort of a comprehension. And that's when Saturn had moved into the sign of Pisces 2.5 years ago in March 2023. Everything that's related to love, connectivity, desires, attractions, things have changed since that time. And we're starting to settle into what that change means now. This is a moment where Venetian efforts can connect with our intentions. It's showing us how much we used to rely on hope, mere belief, mere fantasies. And now, instead of that, we have a sense of knowing. We know how we're located and positioned. I hope you guys can't hear my neighbors. They're like screaming outside for the past 10 minutes. I'm not sure why. And not a bad kind of scream, because I'd go out and try to help. But coming back to our video, but we're starting to see that the relationships that have endured, that had this practical, mutual, reciprocal thing about them, those are the relationships that survived. You know, Capricorn asks for respect and fear. Let's just take the fear aspect of it out. But we're starting to see where there's mutual respect. Those are the relationships that are worth keeping. We can see projects that we absolutely love because as Venus moved through all the signs, we gave them all our sustained attention. We saw ourselves how we can get out of the realm of theory and fantasy into practice and real application of our life. And if you look back in the past year of your life, you should be able to see how this Venetian energy flows through you in a very different way. So it's not about us just having these fantastical wishes and wants and desires, like the way we could in the sign of Pisces. Like Venus in Pisces can be out to lunch when it's working negatively because it has no sense of realism. Like right now, we know what it means to commit when it comes to love, connection. We understand what it takes for others to be committed to us. We know that it doesn't matter that we say to someone that I love them, as I mentioned earlier, or when they say it to us. We know that it has to be shown. It has to be reciprocal. It has to be enacted in a real way. So the sextile is something like a quiet acknowledgement right now. And I want you to sit back and acknowledge your endurance. Acknowledge how much you have adapted. Acknowledge all the experiences that you've had to have, and many of them are not easy to get to this point. Sometimes we get so lost in what we want and what is ahead that we forget to give credit where credit's due. And we should acknowledge other people who have gone through this journey with us. And I want us to realize that this moment is not demanding change. It's not announcing change. It's confirming our understanding, like the distance that we have traveled and what we've come to understand and embody now, the hard work that it's gone behind it. And I also want us to pay attention to how this is altering our trajectory and our movement in the future now, because our choices have become refined. They have matured. Saturn represents maturity. Our efforts when it comes to the Venetian qualities are now directed. We're not just being pulled by desires. This is almost like Venus telling Saturn, yep, you gave me the map. I didn't know how to travel through it. I did. I have penned every part of the map. Now I know the way. And because of that, I also know how I need to proceed moving forward. I understand the conditions of my life now. So the highest lesson right now is the way that we have integrated So many things that Saturn changed. And good on those of us who can still love, who can still trust to love. We can continue to build on this. And before closing this video, I'd like to ask you to share, like, and subscribe. It's you guys' participation that's making this channel grow. And I personally love to see how these transits are unfolding in your life. I'm an eternal researcher in love with learning, and I know half of astrology is to understand the context of these symbols as real life experiences. So I appreciate it when you guys share your experiences. And if you guys want a greater depth of what these transits mean, I put them up as articles, the ideas that spark them. That'll be on my website at parisayazdi.com. And if you want a reading of these transits in your own birth charts or just to understand the blueprint of your life, you can go to the email in the description box below or again to parisayazdi.com for more information. And we have come to the end of the video, but I'm not going to close this video with a wish for us the way I do in other videos. Instead, I want to leave you with some questions because this is a conclusion. This is a closure. This is a moment for reflection. I want to ask you, where has your values reorganized in the past 2.5 years? Where has your desires matured? How have they matured? How has commitment replaced your longing? Very fast, quick attractions that are spontaneous but only belong in the moment and they cannot carry you anywhere. How have they changed? How do you understand love today? How does it differ from 2.5 years ago? Who do you want to be connected to and how do you want to be connected to your life? By answering such questions, you'll be able to understand how Saturn and Venus have been reshaping your life, what those drives within you have been doing, how they've been adapting and changing. And that's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.